We know that the climate is changing much more quickly than the scientists thought even 5 years ago. Rajendra Pachauri, the IPCC, and Jim Hansen said we have less than 10 years to avoid the point of no return. James Lovelock said we may have already passed the point of no return. And clearly the early goals of the Kyoto Protocol are outdated. We don't need 6 and 7% reductions. We need 70% reductions, and we need them yesterday. And we need it through political action. And that is what's so valuable about what the CCC is doing and what their approach is.
Well, I think that the moral dimension, can't be overstated. This is truly a moral problem in so many different ways. It's a part of our obligation to our kids. It's part of our obligation to other species with whom we share this planet. It's part of our obligation to the rest of the world and people who are already living on the edge of survival. But I'm afraid that treating it as a moral problem isn't going to solve it. What is going to solve it is treating it as an economic policy decision. And if you simply make carbon more expensive to emit, if you add the price of emitting carbon to the cost of doing business, well, then people will do business differently.
It's too late to stop global warming. There's nothing we can do now that will prevent the planet from heating up. What we can do is influence how much heating takes place. That difference is what we have to fight for. It's the biggest question that we face in this century.
There are represented here by these signs that I and other people are holding close to 650,000 people in the United States who have signed petitions calling for action on global warming.
We went up to Montreal. We had 150 students in Montreal, which is 5% of our student body. And we helped the Climate Crisis Coalition present the people's ratification of the Kyoto Protocol to the U.S. Embassy or the U.S. Consulate in Montreal.
Okay, we're up to 39,000 yeses this morning. Okay, this is a Kyoto and Beyond petition faced with the grave threat to a livable future for ourselves, our children, and future generations. It is our duty as Americans to respond and urge our government to do the same. And they're now up to 39,000 signatures and continuing to grow.
Montreal was enormous in creating a recognition in the international community that the stance of the U.S. delegation does not represent sentiment within the United States, and further that there is a very, very large and growing piece of the U.S. citizenship that wants to see the international community move ahead with their piece of the agreement, with or without the United States.
If you can put in a good word with President Bush, maybe give a little pressure there from inside. Don't miss the boat. Okay.
Well, the idea of the Climate Crisis Coalition actually came to me, believe it or not, in the middle of the night, one night. After a long life of working on issues of peace and justice, I had always, of course, had a love for the earth and for nature. But suddenly I woke up in the middle of one night and I said, my God, it's global warming.
I felt, this was about 2.5 years ago, that as I followed the news, as I saw what was happening in the world, the floods, the droughts, the melting icebergs, the melting glaciers, the predictions of what was coming, as somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 or 25,000 people died in the heat wave in the summer of 2003, I felt that I needed to be doing much more than I was on this issue.
And I just had this very strong conviction that this issue was the issue and is the issue that is going to be the central issue facing humanity. and the planet?
It's been encouraging to see the way the Climate Crisis Coalition has developed. We had last year 70 organizations that endorsed a whole campaign that we had leading up to the big Montreal conference, the United Nations Climate Change Conference. There were actions that happened in at least 40 cities around the United States during that time. There was a huge demonstration of 30,000 or more people in Montreal on December 3rd, the International Day of Action. Worldwide, there were about 100,000 people who demonstrated and took action on that day, the first ever coordinated worldwide actions on this crucial issue, and there's another day of action planned for November 4th of 2006 that we are calling for and will be working on here in the United States.
And something that really inspired us is the need to connect not only our indigenous issues here in this country and how climate and energy policy impacts our people, but also the need to break down the boundaries that have been created by this country that keep us separated by race, by class, by urban, by rural, by women, by men, youth. You know, it's something that we really need to start working, and that's why our commitment is to come together and to organize by all sectors, by all communities, and not remain divided. And that's why there's really a tremendous need for the common people, the citizens of this country, to come together to learn more about how climate is a real issue and how it's part of our compounding change and crisis situation that all people have a right to know, and how it's overlaid with energy policy, on how we need to cut back on fossil fuels. And this is why the Climate Crisis Coalition's work is very critical to bring people together.
So the vision that came to me was building this very inclusive coalition along the lines of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s idea of the beloved community that would include poor people and scientists and farmers and, of course, the peace movement students and people of faith as well.
And it's such a wonderful opportunity to be working with these great people in this Climate Crisis Coalition and its efforts to put together constituencies that have not been dealt with in the environmental movement in the past. And that, I think, is a very significant part of what we're doing. And hopefully the congressional direction that we're taking at this particular moment will have a very strong impact on the changes we have to see if we can and will have the effect of influencing our congressional candidates and hopefully getting some people in Congress who can begin to make a difference and understand the incredibly important impact of this issue on the world.
The Climate Crisis Coalition launched the people's ratification of the Kyoto Global Warming Treaty a year ago, the day that the Kyoto Protocol actually came into force.
Well, it's an initiative that has basically come about to demand that the United States ratify a protocol signed in Kyoto, Japan, that will effectively allow for and call for the reduction of carbon pollution in the atmosphere, and that by reducing the amount of greenhouse gases and emissions, the world has a better chance of breathing and becoming less dangerous in terms of climate change.
And we felt that since the United States was such a notable absence in this terribly important international treaty, that we would give people a vehicle to say, well, if our country is not signing up, at least we will. At least we will express our desire to be responsible stewards, and we think our country should sign.
This is a document that was created because this country did not endorse the Kyoto Protocol. And so we created this document so that people could say, look, the country's not doing anything, but gosh darn it, we really think it's important. We are worried about the well-being of this planet. We are worried about our livelihood within the next 10 years. We're worried about our children. We're worried about every aspect of life. So we sign this document. We sign it in numbers. We pass it. We give it to you. You pass it on to your friends and your family. You pass it on to the organizations that you feel are important in your lives and that will help support this document. And we get as many signatures as possible. And this is what we are asking people to do, to gather signatures, to grow these signatures by leaps and bounds, to have these signatures grow in numbers like a prairie fire. And then we take those signatures to the congressional candidates. And this helps us say, look, there are thousands, if not hundreds of millions of people who care and are concerned, and we want this part of the next platform.
Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step down. You're breaking my mother's heart. Fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more. You say cool down, we say step down. You're breaking my mother's heart. Shame, shame. Children need schools more than they need jails, and that's where our society fails. First 7 years creates a child's foundation, mandatory for a healthy nation.
I think it's great. I think this is what we need. We need energy, and we need to get media attention and make everyone else in the entire world realize that Americans don't necessarily agree with what our government's doing, and that people are rational and they want clean energy, they want a secure future.
We left them alone and they died of thirst. Mothers and fathers confused and forlorn, and when the children are missing, well, there's something wrong. And we're fired up, ain't gonna take it no more. Tied up, ain't gonna take it no more.
Now in our second year of the people's ratification of Kyoto, we're taking it to the congressional level. Last December, we delivered our petitions, along with other groups who had similar petitions, to Montreal, to the International UN meeting. And now we're going back to the grassroots. We're going to the congressional districts, and we're urging our supporters who have already signed in each of the congressional districts all across the country to go back and to go door to door and to get on the phone and to forward our petition by email to people they know in their communities, to tell them that climate issues are a very important issue this congressional race, especially because we still have an administration that is turning its back to this problem. But we have a growing number of legislators, Democrat and Republican and independents, who are saying this is an issue we have to address. So we feel that the campaigns have to address this issue. The campaigns have to talk about global warming and what we can do about it.
In this election, we will not permit the environment and climate and change in particular to be a non-issue, as was the case in the presidential election, where it was scandalously, virtually invisible.
And there's several particulars that we are putting forward as far as what we want these candidates to support. We want them to support the McCain-Lieberman piece of legislation without the nuclear energy part of it. We think it's a beginning point. It's minimal, but it's a beginning point.
This act has been around for quite a while, and we regard it as an important first step. It's not going to solve the problem, but at least it provides a concrete measure for states and for communities and for businesses to limit the amount of carbon that is put into our atmosphere.
And also to move away, as we have said in our past campaign, USA join the world in supporting minimally the Kyoto Protocol, the United Nations Protocol, which is hardly a radical piece of international legislation, but is sort of a minimal thing that any decent nation worthy of the name would support. So we will ask our congresspeople to pressure the government to take positions on that.
And we want, probably most importantly of all, we want candidates to say that they want to end completely subsidies for fossil fuels, for oil, for coal, for natural gas to these huge energy companies, and for that money instead, which it's estimated is as much as $25 billion a year, to have that money instead go into renewable energy, to advance, to dramatically jumpstart and accelerate the clean energy revolution that is absolutely essential if the planet is to survive and the species, all the different life forms are to survive.
Why Earth? Because it's all we have. It's the one thing that we have in common. And we're in a period of rapid change right now, where we can start to actually see the differences from one year to the next in the temperature, in the weather, in ways that make sense to average people. Where you can look at New Orleans, you can look at the Arctic North, you can look at specific areas, even Japan. You can see the climate actually changing and know that that's not a good thing. Right? People understand the Ice Age. They just don't quite know yet how to connect it all to themselves, but that's our work. And so I'm excited to be a part of that work and to make it interesting and to make, I think to combine it with other social justice work that makes people want to stay alive and want to save the planet, so that it's not assumed that life is good for everyone, but that we have to raise the quality of life and then raise the quality of where we live.
Global warming is always a problem that is further along than it appears. So the CO2 that we're putting up now is going to determine the climate that our kids and our grandkids are going to live with. And so there is absolutely no time to waste. And the midterm elections in 2006 are not a moment too soon to begin to put this issue really front and center and ask your candidates, where they stand on this issue. Ask them how they stand on the McCain-Lieberman bill. Ask them where they stand on the Kyoto Protocol, and really make sure that they cannot get through the 2006 election without addressing this issue, because it simply is one of the most important ones that we are facing, that our children will face, and that our grandchildren will face.
The United States contributes more to the global warming problem than any other country on the face of the earth. And as a result of that, the national elections become very important. If we do not have candidates addressing this issue, being accountable for creating new policies about how we move forth with reducing our emissions profile, how we move forth with changing our fuel consumption patterns, how we move forth with transforming the addiction that our society has to oil and other fossil fuels. If we don't move forth on those things through national policy, then we're going nowhere on the global climate crisis.
What we are facing as far as economic potential losses is tremendous. When you look at the intensity of hurricanes, those are our tax dollars going to pay for those. The potential loss of life due to things like hurricanes, due to the spread of tropical diseases, droughts that can cause desertification in Africa, increasing conflict there. Climate destabilization is increasingly going to make the entire world unstabilized, and our generation needs to realize that we're the ones who are going to pay for it, not only in the environmental sense, but very much so in the economic sense, that this economic burden is going to hit us. And we're not going to be able to function as a society as we are right now unless we take action to take care of these issues at their root and stop them right now.
One of the key things about this clean energy revolution that is very important is that it is very much a job creator. So that in addition to the critical environmental benefits and the aspects to it, this is very much a part of an economic development that can be of great benefit to the excluded, to the oppressed, to the disenfranchised in the United States and around the world. There's literally millions of jobs worldwide, probably tens of millions of jobs or more that will be created through this whole transition to a clean energy economy. So that from the standpoint of addressing some of the vast inequalities and injustices that exist in this world, this could be a very important component of that process of a just transition, of a transition to a different kind of a world where justice and equality really is being moved towards instead of being moved away from, which is our current reality.
Renewable energy is much more labor intensive than automated coal and oil mining. It would create lots of jobs. It would really begin to turn impoverished and dependent countries into trading partners. It would basically lead to a much more stable, a much more equitable, and a much wealthier global economy, I think.
I think that elections are where this change happens. We know the science, the public is supportive. The technologies exist. The wind power capacity of this country is incredible, incredible, incredible. The solutions are here now. We can ramp up fuel economy standards. The one thing that we do not have right now that we need to achieve true success on climate change is the political will. And 2006 and 2008 are our big chances.
Around 200 mayors have signed the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. They're doing a lot on the local level. Over half of the states in the country have passed renewable portfolio standards. A number have passed clean cars bills. Policies are happening everywhere. It's just not at the national level yet.
The last year has finally seen people begin to wake up and understand, Americans to wake up and understand what's going on. Hurricane Katrina put a human face on climate change in a way that we haven't had before, and it coincided with all kinds of other scientific signals that not only is this problem real, but that in many ways it's worse than we'd imagined before. Week after week, if you read Science and Nature and the other important journals, there are new indications of just how difficult our predicament is, how much worse the science is than we'd understood before. That means we need our politics to be much, much better than they've been. We can't continue with these sort of policies of denial and inaction that we've seen really since we first started talking about global warming 20 years ago, and particularly that we've seen in the last 5 years under the Bush administration.
This issue, this problem is so big. It's, the exciting thing about the issue is that there are things we can do individually. There's things we can do as families and cities and states, but we have to have federal action on this issue. We have to.
I think it's the missing piece right now on stopping global warming is we don't have policy because we don't have the political will, and we need a grassroots movement to generate the political will to make change.
I think it's important to charge our candidates and our elected officials with a lot more responsibility, because we have been losing a tremendous amount of ground based upon the fact that they're not taking care, they're not being observant, many of them are missing in action, and we need to make them all accountable to not only their own constituents, but to this country as a whole and to the world.
There are going to be some people who oppose us no matter what. There are going to be a lot of people who will never get the climate issue. Never. They will never get it. But we have to move forward, and we have to move forward by speaking the truth all the time. We got to tell the truth. Now, that may not mean in Westchester County that you talk about ice caps. You may not want to talk about peak oil. What we do in our region, Maryland, Virginia, and D.C., is we talk about what's already happening in our region. What are the local impacts and local solutions to climate change where you live?
So we have to start now, and we can start now if we have people in Washington and in state capitals around the country who understand that this is not one thing on a long list of problems that they need to deal with, but that this is job one and the only civilization challenging threat that we've ever faced.
I think there's no one solution to the climate crisis that we're facing. This has to be a multifaceted response that includes things like raising people's level of awareness and understanding of how climate change impacts their lives and the lives of their families. It has to deal with also creating new policy that will transform the way that the United States, which is a key contributor to the global warming effects globally, deals with our climate. We've got to change U.S. policy on this issue, because if we don't start right here at home, then because this is where the belly of the beast is, if you will, we will never have an impact on climate change if the U.S. doesn't change its policies drastically and soon.
If people are interested in helping, and I'm sure there are many of you, if you're watching this DVD, I am sure you're interested in helping. What we really want you to do is to understand, again, how important it is to affect the congressional races that are coming up. And what you can do is a number of things. You can contact us here at this office. You can contact me, Raya Ariella, at 413-243-5665, or you can email me, and the information is on the DVD as to where you can email us. And what we really want you to do is for you to go out and contact as many people as you can and as many organizations as you can and collect as many signatures as possible on the people's ratification of the Global Warming Treaty. And what we intend to do with these signatures is to bring these to the congressional candidates and show them how important it is and how many people really care about this issue and that we don't have any time at all.
We are living the great big dipper. We are washed by the very same rain. We are swimming in the stream together, some in power and some in pain. We can worship this ground.